It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, lads and lasses of all ages, welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 329 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the multiverse. We come to you on January 7th, 2025. This is the first show of the year 2025, and I am Mac, joined by my usual co-host, Mr. Nice Guy 425, as we talk about video games, but we are joined by an additional nerd, a Mr. Spennis the Menace. Spennis the Menace is our resident Pokemaster. He is a sports ball expert and co-host of Ruckus and the Menace podcast. We are happy to have him here while we discuss the games of 2025. And this is, for those of you who are just tuning in, our fifth Game of the Year discussion with guest Spennis the Menace. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here, especially glad to have you here, Spennis. Good to have you.
Yes, definitely glad to be back again. Some notable things that I will be plugging right away here.
Please.
Country Roads to the Natty, which is previous series with College Football 25, which was my content darling of the year. And I did 2 years of James Madison, and ultimately after the second year, I got a Power 4 job in the game, so I ended up going straight over to WVU. This is the only season of Country Roads to the Natty because some success will come here over the next couple of weeks as we are approaching the Big 12 title game and the college football playoff once again. And then our NFL playoffs begin this week for Ruckus's Super Bear Run and my New Era and Old DC series over on the Ruckus and the Menace channel, along with our regular episodes that air every Tuesday afternoon.
Nice. It's good to have a sports ball expert here with us.
Absolutely.
Lom, anything that you want to plug before we get started?
You know what? If there's this podcast I do called Two Nerds in a Pod, if any of you have not heard of it, please check it out. It's pretty dope, and we've been doing it for a while. Little podcast, never won any awards or anything, but we're working on it. So check that out.
Working on it. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to Two Nerds in a Pod. Welcome to the Game of the Year discussion. And just good to have everybody here. So let's get into it. The Game of the Year. So, obviously, there have been institutions, if you will, people who have said what they think the Game of the Year is. And, maybe it's a good one, but was it the Game of the Year? That's what we're here to find out by going through the honorable mentions, going through the games themselves, and also, as you know, we like to mix it up on our Game of the Year episodes, so we are adding in an additional game awards. Infamy awards. These are going to be the type of awards you don't want. Razzies, if you will, but for video games. So stay tuned, because in between these segments, we are going to honor those who deserve none. Without any further ado, Spennis the Menace, as our guest, we'd love to have you lead off. Are there any honorable mentions, things that were great but didn't quite make that top 5 for you?
Yes, I have a few that kind of stick out here. As far as a mobile game that brings nostalgia and a streamlined version of playing the Pokemon trading card game, the Pokemon trading card game Pocket, which more so you get to open 2 packs free a day, and then also with eventual hourglasses, and so it kind of operates a little bit like a gacha, but I actually built pretty much some meta decks without having to spend a ton of money. I just was able to use what the game provided and still managed to reach level 25. I'm almost to level 26 as far as a collector level. It's a good little short time passer. Though more events on the solo side, there's some multiplayer stuff that is involved, but it's all 1v1 PvP. But more so, the events are kind of the main way that this game helps you get some more collection on top of that. But my wife's choice, she really enjoyed Super Mario Party Jamboree this year, what's fun about this is that you have rules that are set for casual play, which is your party rules. There's a pro rules in it for competitive play. So you've got two different skill sets. There's different things that involve online multiplayer. Even the Kubathlons go up to 20 players. They also blend some old nostalgia maps even with some unique twists to the classic Mario Party formula. So Super Mario Party Jamboree is definitely an improvement upon the first one.
Nice.
Mr. Nice Guy, any honorable mentions from you, sir?
There's only two that I want to mention, and sometimes you watch a game. I don't really watch Twitch, but I do like watch a little bit of TikTok, and I'll see games and I'll be like, oh, that game looks awesome. I gotta check it out. There are some games that are more fun to watch than they are to play. And one of my honorable mentions this year was a game like that, which is Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. I have never played a Warhammer game before, and I saw this one. I saw people doing the multiplayer. It looked very unique, Gears of War-like, much more penalizing when you die and that you got to respawn and go a ways back, and there's a little bit of a delay. So more skill-based multiplayer, and it was fun. I had a really good time with it, but didn't quite crack my top 5. More fun to watch than it was to play. The other game that I have on my honorable mentions, now I'm a big Marvel guy, and so anything Marvel will at least get my attention. There's a new free-to-play Marvel Rivals, which the most simple way I could explain it is it's Overwatch, hero-based shooter, but with Marvel characters. It works on Steam Deck, so you can play it on the go, and it's free to play, and it's a good game. Longevity-wise, there are so many games in this space, I don't know how long it will last, unless they just keep adding more and more and more and more Marvel characters. But to do that, they're going to have to dive deep into the archives and start putting lesser-known people. So, solid gameplay, fun with friends. Those are my two honorable mentions.
Nice.
I did get my hands on that one briefly.
Yeah?
For the time that I had on it, I enjoyed my time playing as the Punisher. But
Nice.
really beyond that, I don't think... And they had some ways to kind of make it friendly to learn characters, but at the same time, the hero shooter... I think the hero shooter is so oversaturated now.
Agree.
I think Marvel Rivals is... It didn't make my cut just because it only has so much space to operate within just the own genre, because so many of them are being made, and there's even some more type of that game on the way that may run out of space too.
Agreed.
Well, as y'all know, I am firmly trapped in the past, so I am glad that I've got you two experts in video gaming to show me the way, show me the light, and show all of us what we should be getting from 2024. Lom and I have done the indies, now let's do the mainstream, maybe with a heaping dose of indies as well. Spennis, our guest, number 5. What is your number 5 pick on best games?
I am going to introduce this with a couple of disclaimers that there will be a few games that you will not see. You will not see Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Came out too late.
It came out late enough that I would have enjoyed it, but because it was not as accessible to me,
Really?
my CPU was not able to run it.
Oh, got it.
That was what I was talking about with the accessibility rule. Because it was not eligible for anything in 2024, I am now going to officially count Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for 2025 consideration,
Nice.
because it will eventually be coming to PS5, where I will have more accessibility to it.
Nice.
I also will not have Metaphor ReFantazio, Final Fantasy.
Wait, hold on. We don't want to ruin your list by saying what's not on there. We want people to be in suspense. So you gotta wait. Yeah, you gotta wait. You can't tell us what's not on there. Let's hear what's on there, my bud.
The first game that I will have there as my number 5,
Number 5.
Dungeons of Hinterberg.
Really?
A cel-shaded N64 looking game, but it has more choose your own adventure stuff, and it's an independent game that, for the game price or Game Pass rate that I had on it, and just the feel of how I could just get into it and enjoy it as your character is on a vacation into the Austrian Alps in an area with magic, and there's elements of unique puzzles. The graphics could be a small eyesore, with how blocky it looks, but I think the art style fits the means that makes it make sense. And
Nice.
Dungeons of Hinterberg, for me, I am gonna put at number 5, and it actually knocked off Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket.
Love it.
And I'm a Pokemon guy.
Pokemaster. So I've actually seen Dungeons of Hinterberg being played by some relatives, and it seemed like a lot of fun. Was there anything specific about Dungeons of Hinterberg that held it back from being higher in the ranking, or was it just that there were such good ones?
I think there were better games. I think there were better games that even did some stuff that turned overall game design, from what I have seen, on its head. Also, a lot of stuff that was better executed.
Okay, cool. Well, it's good to know that it's not because of a deficiency in Dungeons of Hinterberg itself. Makes me happy to hear that. So, Mr. Nice Guy, do you have a number 5 choice?
I do, and I really like the direction that this episode is going, because this is a year where I was much more intrigued with indie games as well. And just to be clear, we did our indie game of the year episode last week. I will not be talking about any of the indies that we got codes for and talked about in that episode. But, Mac, my number 5 is effectively an indie game, but from a bigger studio. I went with Deep Rock Galactic Survivor for my number 5 game. Now, for the uninitiated, Deep Rock Galactic is a phenomenal game where you go around as dwarves, and you're effectively left underground. You mine different types of rocks, you kill bugs, and then at the end of every mission, your goal is to collect what you're supposed to, complete different tasks, and then exfil by getting back to your starting point. And this is much more complex and much more harder than you would think. There are different class systems. It's a phenomenal game. I know our friend Uncle Ruckus, friend of the show, plays it quite a bit. Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is different. It's the same characters, the same class system as Deep Rock Galactic, but it is in a Vampire Survivors style format, a bullet hell roguelite. Pick this up on the Steam sale for $7, and as a dad, as someone with a career and hobbies, getting a game for $7 and then being able to get dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of gameplay from it, because it's Steam Deck compatible and the gameplay loop is very Vampire Survivors-esque, where you can play a game in 20 or 30 minutes and you can pause it, is just so appealing to me. Last thing I want to say about this, the gameplay loop, so addicting, because you have the 4 classes, but as you complete different things, you can level up, you can increase your stats in different categories, like your fire rate, your health, your regen, your critical hit percentage, and it's so much harder and more complex than you'd imagine. It's great. Love it.
I do love games like that. They make really, really fun, enjoyable play sessions, especially if you can pop in, pop out real quick. Spennis, did you want to say anything about Deep Rock Galactic?
This one was one that I did not get a look into for my list.
Now, completely understandable, so many options.
So many options.
Well then, in that case, we're going to turn to our first Game Award of Infamy. This is going to go to the most layoffs. Yes, our award for the most people laid off in the year 2024. All from one mega company, of course. More than 2,800 layoffs in the year of 2024 alone. It's tough to actually sort of pin it down because they're not very vocal about how many people got laid off, so it was tough to keep a track. In case anybody wishes to take a guess who it was before I make the reveal, the nominees are...
Division Blizzard.
That's a good guess. I'm going to guess, this is probably totally wrong, but I'm going to guess Sony Studios because of the issues they had with Concord.
Microsoft Gaming is because of course Microsoft bought up everybody, so this is on them. So this award for most layoffs goes to you, Phil Spencer, for overseeing the company and these 2,800 layoffs. Now, I have trophies for each one of these awards of infamy here where I am. So, Phil Spencer, reach out. I would be happy to coordinate with you and deliver it in person. The name of this game is Name and Shame.
This is terrible. This is
No,
terrible.
This
Mac
is wonderful.
Mac is burning bridges with people who don't listen to our pod, and someday may. And so, Phil Spencer, I just want to say, yes, Xbox is struggling. But
Maybe you should have thought about that before you bought everybody. If you couldn't keep it too hot, step out of the kitchen.
You know what? I won't say that Xbox is doing well, but I'm not going to burn a bridge with Phil Spencer. Phil, keep doing what you're doing, man. Step your game up.
What they were trying to do was buy the studios so that eventually Game Pass would take off. And Game Pass, I mean, I still have PC Game Pass, and Game Pass still exists. So I think it's just them steering away from the console market and really trying to focus more on what Game Pass is.
Fair.
And that changed, and that's probably where the cause of the layoffs are. Granted, Activision Blizzard is also under the Microsoft umbrella.
So you were partially right there. But I do have a trophy for you, Phil Spencer, if you care to come out, or I'll even come down there. Just get in touch. Your people can call my people. We'll make it happen.
Terrible.
So, moving on to those things that we want to celebrate with our number 4 pick for Game of the Year. Spennis, I believe you have a choice for us, sir.
Yep, and it's another small indie game that got nominated for Best Family Game this year in the Game Awards. From All Possible Futures and Devolver Digital. A game that did a great job of doing the 2D design concepts, but then also having a pop-out 3D element that made it look really cool. It is the Plucky Squire at number 4 for me this year.
I haven't even heard of this. Tell me more.
I found it as a game that was included in my PlayStation Plus. I believe it was the extra tier, but I have premium. It's a game where you play as Jot, who's pretty much a plucky squire. This game is definitely a gateway game for a lot of people who want to do action adventure games. You have something that is similar to Scribblenauts where you can manipulate things based on some certain words when you're inside the storybook. But instead of having the creative block sometimes that comes with playing Scribblenauts, you just have the word that you just swat at it with Jot's sword, and then you have a couple of like a rhythm section with one particular character, and so they have a few different things involved, and then Jot is able to pop in and out of the book to manipulate the pages to try and move landscapes of the level, and it carried a very simplistic and reasonably understandable story to beat a villain, par for the course. But the piece that really has turned game design on its head, you have the 2D stuff where you're inside the book, but then you have the ability to pop out outside the book and do a bunch of different things inside the room, inside the actual room that you're in. And being able to switch between the two to also solve puzzles. It's a little hand-holding at certain aspects with it, some of the limited word selection, but you still have to solve the puzzle that the words are giving you. I think that the Plucky Squire, because of the being able to do the switch, like having to switch between the 2D concept and the 3D concept, and also make it feel somewhat seamless and make it make sense. This is why I have it ranked at number 4.
Nice. So I have not so many games that you guys are bringing that I have not heard of. Plucky Squire, you say 2D, 3D transition reminds me a little bit of Link Between Worlds, I think was the one.
Yep.
Where you did a lot of stuff like that. But sounds like this has a lot more puzzle depth to it. Is that fair?
That's a pretty fair assessment. I mean, you do have a little bit of that 2D, 3D depth also with Super Mario Odyssey as well.
Oh, I didn't realize.
You have the 8-bit Mario type of structures for certain things, but then you also have to pop outside for like the standard 3D Mario platform that Super Mario Odyssey is.
Another game that Mac has not played, but will one day get to. Mr. Nice Guy, anything to say about Plucky Squire, or do you want to get right into your number 4?
Let's move on to number 4. I think Spen has covered that fully. So my number 4 is a game that is a comfort food of games for me. And it's interesting because typically I try to play a lot of the top AAA games. This year I have like a few AAAs and a lot of indies, much like Spennis. Very interesting year for games. This is going to be the most unique list I've ever done on this annual episode. My number 4, if you've heard me talk about my first Christmas with my wife and how I got the Xbox 360, and I walked into a thrift store, we were looking for some used games, and this guy was talking about Call of Duty Black Ops, and he said it's the best game ever made, and he said it with such confidence that it made me go out and buy it, and I got hooked. And this year's number 4 game is Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which came out this year. Some people may laugh at that. They say it's a bro game. They say it's just an FPS. This game has so much depth and so much to do that it brings me back almost to 2010 when I played my first Call of Duty game. It does have the campaign, and they've ramped that up a lot, where you have a main base, you get money, you can upgrade your base and get better weapons and get better skills. It does have the multiplayer, and I feel that it's extremely balanced, extremely fun. New maps and a combination of old maps, great guns, hit detection is good, ton of fun. And then, of course, it does have the zombie mode, and they continue to release free content. And zombie mode is something that you can simply sit down and play with your friends. You can do it solo. You can have a good time for hours and hours and hours. And if you're really, really hardcore, you can try to do these several step-long Easter eggs where you get wonder weapons and where you do different things. Combine that with a battle pass that can basically be acquired for free. I have COD points that I never paid for that I've acquired over the years by doing different challenges. And then the cosmetics are something I never personally spend money on, but they are there as well to give you more guns. The prestige system gives you so many good rewards. This is a very, very complete video game, but because it's an annual release, it will probably never get the recognition that I feel it deserves. It's my comfort food of games. Number 4 is Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
Did play Black Ops 6. I did not put it on my list due to a bunch of games that executed things a lot better. Call of Duty is not necessarily my personal jam.
That's fair.
I've also ran into a lot of stuff this year that may not have seemed like my jam at the moment, but...
You know, I'll say this. I've always felt that Treyarch makes the best Call of Duties. And last time we got one from them was 2020 with Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. So now 2024, 4 years later, we're finally getting another Treyarch game. And I'll be playing it for at least 4 years until the next one comes out. So I think they are the best COD studio. And I'm very excited, really loving it.
Now we turn to another award of infamy, or OOF award, as I've seen described in the chat for those who are with us live. This will be an award to the most closed studios this year in 2024. With 12 closed studios, we have the Embracer Group. So Lars Wingefors, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. My apologies. Again, I have an award for you for the most closed studios in the year. We can get together. There'll be a small ceremony, and we'll just keep burning those bridges. But Embracer Group, 12 studios. I don't know how you pull it off, but 2025 was your year.
2024.
Oh, yes, that's right. 2024 was your year, but 2025 is the year for you to collect that trophy. All right, now let's move on to the positivity. We've got our number 3 picks. Spennis, what have you got for number 3?
Game Science made one here based on the Chinese myth of Journey to the West. And it also earned some major awards outside of the Game Awards itself. And my number 3, I got to play it really on a quick little trial basis thanks to PS Plus Premium. Mm-hmm. But from what I got out of just that couple of hours, it was difficult enough to put down and worthy to make this list as far as being able to do more boss rush. It feels more like Jedi Fallen Order than a true From Software game. And that is Black Myth Wukong. Basically, it tells that story in an effective way. The boss fights were difficult, but still found ways to kind of not put it down. I had also been going back into the 2021 side and caught up on a game that I did not play in 2021 for that list in Kena Bridge of Spirits. And I think even though Black Myth Wukong does not do things as effectively as Kena Bridge of Spirits, it is still a very good game in what it could do, and especially for Game Science, who is normally known for making mobile games. This is their first big studio AAA style game from this smaller developer, and they had a banger.
I know nothing about it aside from there was some frustration of it not receiving Game of the Year. Some people frustrated about that, losing to Astrobot. But aside from that, yeah, it seemed what I had seen. It looked like a visual feast, if you will.
It was definitely a very popular community pick, and the Steam Awards gave the Game of the Year to Black Myth Wukong, and also the Golden Joysticks. So that's why I said it got a whole bunch of stuff outside of what Jeff Keighley does. But it was up there for Game of the Year, and probably was number 2 or number 3 on that voting tally, it seemed like.
Nice
Indeed. Well, Mr. Nice, got anything to say on Black Myth
No,
Wukong?
it's one that's on my list. It's so weird. There were so many that were nominated this year for the Game of the Year at the Game Awards and with other gaming outlets that I did not play. Some of them I will go back and play. Some of them I will not. Black Myth Wukong is a game that I will get in my rotation at the right time, right? Baller on a budget. I got to say real quick, Steam sales have changed the way that I buy games, because I always read these articles and Reddit posts about people who have these backlogs that are ridiculous. Pro tip for everyone: before you buy a game on Steam sale or anywhere, go to howlongtobeat.com, see how long it takes to beat that game, and tell yourself, ask yourself, yes, this is $5, but do I want to commit 27 hours to this? And it will save you a ton of money and a ton of time. Because just because something's a bargain doesn't mean you're going to want to put in that much time. So Black Myth Wukong will get played at the right time.
Well then, if it wasn't your number 3, what was your number 3, Mr. Nice Guy?
Good question. So once again, great year for indies, great year for AAA. My number 3 is an indie game that I really, really enjoyed. I'm a fan of the Metroidvania. We played barely any. We played maybe 1 or 2 Metroidvanias in our indie reviews this year, but this one is a truly special game that makes you think, with no combat, but more with puzzle solving. My number 3 was Animal Well. Things that I loved about Animal Well. Obviously, it's a Metroidvania. I love the idea of using your environment and using tools to traverse through the world rather than using a shooter or a traditional double jump or something that lets you phase through blocks. But just using, things like a yo-yo. Using things like a bubble gun that allow you to jump higher, but require you to time your jumps so that you're using a certain level of skill. And then things that in the game that require you to be observant, to have a pen and paper, and to take notes, because this world is so complex that no matter how smart you are, there's going to be times where you're stuck. But not stuck to the point of frustration, stuck to the point of, I need to put this down, go touch some grass, and then come back later. Touch some grass. The other thing that really impressed me about this game, Mac, is that it was made by a solo dev. And I always have a soft spot for games that are made by a single person, who are doing the music, doing the artwork, doing the programming. And on top of it, coming up with the puzzles. And I believe that it took this person, I can't remember his name right now, but I believe it took 7 or 11 years to make this game. So I was more than happy to purchase it in the Steam sale, and I've had a blast with it on the Steam Deck. Last thing that really impressed me about this is I read somewhere that the dev in an interview said that people will be solving secrets from Animal Well for years. After you figure out the base game and complete the game, there is so much more to go back and figure out. And I'm just extremely impressed with the depth and with the fun and with the enjoyment and satisfaction I got from solving the puzzles in this game. Phenomenal game.
Nice. Spennis, a quick rebuttal on Animal Well, if any?
Played Animal Well, and I just found that it was not necessarily my jam, because you're starting out from a complete ground zero, and the hardest thing to do in that game is try and comprehend the puzzle that is the entire game itself.
That's the point.
That is the point of the game, and I think for me personally, where I love a little more focusing on narrative, and trust me, there's some different games that I have with narrative. I just could not figure, I could figure out certain little things of okay, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. it feels like I spent a lot more time like spinning my wheels and not necessarily picking up ground. Tunic was a game where you had that start from nothing, but it didn't feel like you were spinning your wheels as much and going nowhere because there were still certain things you could do.
It's a certain style of game where you're dropped in a world, Hyper Light Drifter, Animal Well, Tunic, and you either like it or you don't. So it's all good. No worries.
Now that we've got that, we will turn to our third award of infamy. We'll call this the Copper Joystick Award for longest vaporware. So it's a little bit more, a little bit less quantitative to nail this one down, right? But I think I've narrowed it down to a few. The nominees are Valve for Half-Life 3, Bethesda for Elder Scrolls 6, and Cloud Imperium for Star Citizen. And, drumroll, the award for longest vaporware goes to Elder Scrolls 6, announced in 2018 and expected to be released in 2026. Keep in mind, everybody, the announcement itself is as old today as Skyrim was when the announcement was made.
So I gotta ask Spennis, because there's another game that I feel like should be on that list. Spennis, don't say it, Max. Spennis, what game do you think that I'm thinking of, based on what you know of me? What game do you think should be on that list?
I was probably gonna say a Splinter Cell.
Close.
Fable doesn't count in that because Fable was announced in 2020.
Splinter Cell starts with an S, and so it's close in the fact that I was thinking of Silksong. Because that's a game that was announced a long time ago and we still haven't seen. But I agree with Matt.
How long ago, though?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to check. I mean, Hollow Knight came out 2017. So I don't know. Maybe it was announced 2019. I'd have to go check.
Yeah, it was one of those ones that I was debating. Half-Life 3 doesn't get it because Valve never actually announced it, so how can it be vaporware? It's just basically a meme at this point. Star Citizen, while it did kickstart in 2012 and promised its release in 2014, it does kind of have a release.
Yeah, beta.
Beta, yeah, and, then there's nonsense going on there. But Elder Scrolls 6, so Bethesda, get us an Elder Scrolls game, please. In 2025, please. All right. Well, that's our Copper Joystick Award. Now we turn to our number 2 picks. Spennis, what have you got for number 2, sir?
This game here is rustic in its design and ultimately turning, like, basically very, very minimalistic in design, like very rustic in that simplistic look. But the bang for your buck on it is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about anywhere at this point now. And Ruckus and I both have the Ruckus and the Menace seal of approval on this one, as we loved playing it. Mm-hmm. The best indie game and best debut indie from the Game Awards from Local Thunk, it is Balatro.
Tell us more. Why Balatro?
Balatro, it takes such the minimalistic standard of just standard poker. You start with 8 cards in your hand, and you pick the 5 best ones and hang on to 3. You get a certain amount of discards, and you have a certain amount of hands played to reach a blind. But you can continue to build upon that as you go along. You have to cross at least 8 rounds with a deck in order to beat the game, or beat the basic concept of that game. But you have different things that you can rig it with jokers that could expand your multiplier, add more chips, give you free rerolls on jokers as you go about the game. There's tarot cards that enhance certain cards.
It sounds like mechanically it can get out of control real fast.
Yes, it is a minimalist. I basically call it's a rustic game of minimalist design with maximalist mechanics. And those elements of game design, it's another one that I say it turns the elements of game design that we know on its head. And it does that have that whole, like, I want to do another round. I want to see if I can push this further.
Mr. Nice Guy, I know you've got some feelings about Balatro.
Yeah, but maybe I'll save them.
Maybe we'll save them.
Maybe we'll talk about Balatro later.
All right. Well, then, Mr. Nice Guy, what was your number 2 pick?
So my number 2, and I love a good multiplayer game. Like I said, I like to play games that I can pick up and play. But on a Friday night, I do have like a decent number of friends.
Ooh, look at me. I'm Mr. Nice Guy. I've got friends.
I've got friends. I've got a decent number of friends. And what I was gonna say, I stumbled across, is that I have a good number of friends who are in the same stage of life as me. Day jobs, kids, responsibilities, and things like that. And so, like, gaming time is so precious that we try to find games that we can connect on when we have that time, if we're not connecting in person. And this is one game that I feel like brought a lot of people together because it was just dumb fun, but it also was very precise. It had a good leveling system, and the idea of shooting aliens and bugs is just always fun. And so that game was Helldivers 2. Now, at a time when so many games in the AAA space are asking $70 as a point of entry, this is more of a AA game, and they were asking for $40 full price. Once again, I like games with an addicting gameplay loop that allow you to do one mission, do two missions, and then say, you know what, I gotta be done. And so the missions in this game, they take, 30 to 45 minutes. If you're doing a short one, it could be as short as 15, but you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do based on how much time you have. And it's just dumb fun. Awesome guns, awesome level ups. You can kind of customize your character to a certain extent, almost like a Destiny style customization in terms of gear that does nothing. But I've never played a game before where team killing is so widely accepted, because when you throw down these orbitals that are meant to kill the bugs, if your team is in that ray of area of blast radius, they're getting killed, and no one ever seems to get mad. Everyone kind of laughs. So you do the missions, you collect some minerals, you shoot some bugs, and then you exfil, and you take the stuff you've collected and you upgrade your ship. In that sense, it almost has that roguelite element where you can buy upgrades that allow you to do more. This game was super hot when it came out, and they've continued to support it, and more of my 30 to 40 age friends are buying in, and we're having a blast. It's great.
Quick rebuttal on the Helldivers 2, or at least a question.
For liberty!
Does the Helldivers 2 still have that problem, or did they ever walk it back of requiring you to have a PlayStation Network account?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, because I played it on PlayStation 5. So obviously,
Gotcha.
It didn't matter because I wasn't doing it on Steam. Super funny sketch out there about a wife who's married to a guy who plays Helldivers. I will just tell everyone listening who likes Helldivers to go find that skit. It is hilarious. And that's all I'll say about Helldivers.
Gotcha. Now, Ruckus does mention in the chat that it looks like they walked that back with the Helldivers 2, which is good because for a little while there we had, I think it was something like gamers from, I think it was more than one, but less than 100 countries. I could not be more specific than that off the top of my head without notes, that had paid for the game but were locked out of playing it because they no longer had those things. So good on them for walking it back. That's how Ubisoft kept themselves off of this the Infamy Awards. Well, maybe until now. But yeah, now we turn to our Belly Flop Award for the biggest flop game, that is, of the year 2024. And gentlemen, again, I've not played that many games in 2024, at least new games. Who do you propose should get the Belly Flop Award? The biggest flop of 2024. I've got an idea, but it doesn't come from personal experience. So please, gentlemen, Spennis, if you would share your thoughts first.
Okay, when you think of Rocksteady as a developer, first couple of games that come to mind would be Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City. A bunch of great bangers of games. But the direction that they decided to go with this game they released in 2024 of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was basically a very Square Enix Marvel Avengers way, and this game just was not it. This ain't it, Chief. No disrespect to the game they were going for, as looter shooters can be fun when done correctly. Borderlands, anyone?
Yeah.
But were some things gameplay-wise that had enjoyment, but the story just it fell flat on its face, like right from the get-go, as it felt like even a great introductory plot hole was missing. And to take it a step further, the game as a service model has become so far out of touch of what a gamer, especially guys like us who may only have so much quote-unquote sweat equity to place into a service-based game, that much for it, we don't even care about that at all. Just makes it embarrassing and justifies every reason why this game flopped harder than LeBron James when the wind blows near him on a basketball floor.
Mac doesn't understand that analogy, but that's okay.
I'm a sports ball expert. I can't believe you would come for LeBron like that. Mr. Nice Guy, please save this.
You know what? I can't save it because he said the exact same thing that I was going to say, which is Rocksteady was beloved. It's not easy to take a beloved IP and turn it into something that is also beloved, and they managed to do it multiple times with Batman. Batman Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and what else? Spence?
They had Arkham Knight as well.
Arkham City was probably the high point of their games, in my opinion. Fantastic 10 out of 10 game. And so I think that people were excited when they got the Suicide Squad license, because they said Rocksteady has a pedigree of making great superhero stuff, and then they somehow dropped the ball. So, you know, I can't say more than what Spence has said. The thing that's telling is that Suicide Squad is going to be, it already is, the free PlayStation Plus headliner this month. So for it to be free, you know, the year after it came out says something. Typically these types of games are on sale for much longer before they just give it away. And I hope that Rocksteady can rebound. Now, I did read something today that said they are suffering a large number of layoffs as of today, and I can't help but think that a big part of that is the fact that Suicide Squad flopped. So to go from beloved to where they are now is super disappointing.
I am surprised that you guys went there. I thought for sure that it was going to be Concord going to be...
No.
Really?
That was...
Okay.
Well, that was going to be... Spence, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, here. Concord, I didn't get to play it, but a lot of people, like a lot of the whole thing was just, it was good. It was just how we were talking about earlier. That hero shooter game is so overly saturated that it really had no player base to kind of go to because there's too many of them. And Overwatch 2, it already fell flat on its face too.
And that was free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the difference I would say with Concord, that would have been my biggest cash grab because they released it and then basically shut the studio down, 2 weeks later?
Yep, 2 weeks.
So I feel like that was known. Like, maybe it wasn't, but I feel like they said, you know what? We're not going to continue to support this, but let's try to recoup some of our losses. Now, I know that they did refund some of the money to people who purchased it, but I believe that they probably profited somewhat from the purchases that were made. Additionally, I don't know if it ever came out, but there was supposed to be a secret level episode on Concord. So,
really?
Yes. And I don't know if it actually ever came out. I'm going to Google that later. But I just feel like somebody knew this game was not going to be supported, and they continued to allow people to think that this was going to be a thing. Otherwise, that episode would have never been made. So to me, that's the biggest cash grab.
You suspect foul play.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they made some money from that episode being filmed and giving access. Who knows? But I just feel like it was disingenuous. Biggest cash grab to me.
Gotcha. Well, because I have not played any of these, I have to yield to your expertise. Remember, everybody, when you come for Two Nerds in a Pod, a video game podcast, remember that it was Mr. Nice Guy and special guest Spence the Menace who gave you the Belly Flop Award for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Not Mac. Mac is blameless and washes his hands of this particular one. There we go. That has been the lead up to our number ones, everybody. Spence, we need your number one pick for Game of the Year 2024.
Just like a couple of other Game Awards winners that have made the top of my list, The Last of Us Part 2, It Takes Two, and Baldur's Gate 3, the Game Awards Game of the Year did it again. But I think the first question that I have to ask here is, you ever played a game and it seemed like no matter what you were doing in the game and when you were taking it in, a smile of pure joy seldom ever left your face? Astrobot did it for me. it's a lighthearted game where the Game of the Year award for most Game of the Year, like for the Game Awards, it was like, this is a complete stark contrast of what a Game of the Year generally ends up being. And I actually have some numbers here for Astrobot.
I love numbers.
It is the third ever game from Sony to win the Game of the Year. God of War 2018 and Last of Us Part 2 in 2020.
He's got numbers because he thought I was going to do tricky trivia questions about Game of the Year, y'all, just like I did last time.
It is the second ever game that won Best Family Game to also win Game of the Year. It is the second game ever rated below T at E10 to win a Game of the Year. The other one, I am sure Nice Guy would know exactly what that one is.
Super Mario Odyssey?
It is actually Breath of the Wild in 2017.
Okay, yeah, that would have been my second
Yep,
guess.
it is the second ever game below T. Overwatch was at T. It Takes Two was actually at rated T as well. Now that I've kind of got the numbers out of the way on Astrobot, PlayStation turned 30 this year. And this game is an absolutely brilliant love letter to the 30 years of history that PlayStation has brought, done in a very cutesy mascot platformer with Astro, but yet in certain areas, after you beat the boss in a certain section, you had different like little elements where you could rescue some Astrobots themed around a certain game. I don't know how well you want to take your... Did you actually play Astrobot, Nice Guy?
I did not, believe it or not. That was not one that I played.
You have...
But still no spoilers, because I might play it. In fact, I will play it.
Let's just say that 3 out of the 4 characters, and I think they already unveiled right away one of them that you would know, but 3 out of the 4 were from games that we absolutely enjoyed playing throughout the later elements of PlayStation. And the first one, if you know your PlayStation enough, like from the beginning, but yet all the bots, like some of the special bots you could rescue, there was actually a bot that was themed around Crash.
Oh.
Themed around Spyro. Resident Evil. God of War. Uncharted. Horizon. Pretty much just about any game over the 30-year history you would find within the Astrobot bots.
So not just a game celebrating in an amorphous way 30 years of PlayStation, a game that is quite literally celebrating the greatest hits of the PlayStation.
Yes. And then with platforming and elements that stretch you as a gamer of every skill level. I'd consider myself pretty decent. And there were areas and certain things that took even about 20 to 30 tries to get down because of some challenging piece. And they did like a small little expansion level for the holiday season. They brought speed running. They brought tricky platform runs with no checkpoints.
So, Spinnis, like scale of 1 to 10, because I know one thing with PlayStation games, they often have some really, really awesome DualSense integration. How is the DualSense integration in this game? Scale of 1 to 10.
This one actually does a really good job of it. Like, if you have the DualSense things turns on, like there's climbing elements where you actually have to turn the DualSense in order to make... They use the gyro quite a bit to find like certain puzzle pieces, and there's definitely elements of gyro. I don't think they did as much with the adaptive triggers, so there really wasn't as much tensing up there. The gyro elements are great. But overall, I had a ton of fun with this one, and I think you will enjoy this one, and this is a good younger kids game, too.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, I guess you opened with a pretty strong one that you never had a smile of joy leave your face, and that's a pretty insanely high praise. So I'm glad to hear that it's so delightful.
And even finding the bots, like, I was like, wow, they actually found one that was like this, or...
I do want to shock, surprise, maybe even delight some of you by saying that Mac did in fact play one, and maybe only one, 2024 release that was not part of our indie game gambit, indie game list, And that was a game that I can unashamedly put as the number one game of 2024 for Mac. Not just because it was the only one, but because it was also freaking amazing. And that's Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. A puzzle game that did so much, bent your mind in crazy ways, and if you did not have a physical notepad next to you to help you solve the puzzles, you were not getting through it, pal. Not happening, no way. Loved it, fantastic. A bargain at twice the price. Labor of love, also terrific, and I can't wait to play more things from the same people. Also, already bought Sayonara Wild Hearts, the previous one from the same dev, and waiting to get in line for that. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Mac's number one for 2024. But, Mr. Nice Guy, with your wealth of experience in games in 2024, what made your number one pick?
Yeah, so one thing I found, and this kind of goes back to the Black Ops 6 pick, is that some of the best games come as the result of recommendation, and sometimes it's strangers, but there's something about the way in which they say it or the vibe that you get from them that makes them have more credibility. So several months ago, this past summer, I believe, I was at a neighborhood get-together, and we were all hanging out, eating burgers around the pool, the local pool, and was chatting with the friend of one of my neighbors, and we were talking about podcasting. This guy does production on a pretty big podcast. And we were talking about video games. I said, I have a video game podcast. He was like, oh, I'm a gamer too. And he pulled out a Playdate out of his pocket. Now,
Playdate!
Right? Now, if you know what the Playdate is, you're a hardcore gamer. It's a little device that effectively you get games downloaded to it every few months. It has like a crank mechanic. It's a very non-traditional, less commonly seen, newer piece of tech. And that gave him immediate credibility in my mind. So when he recommended Balatro, I immediately started to research it because he said it was a game that he could not put down. And thanks to him and through his fault, I have now put more hours than I'm willing to admit into Balatro. And so it was Spennis' number 2. It's my number 1. He described it really well. It's a poker roguelite with multipliers that come in the form of jokers, with additional mechanics that come in the form of card manipulation. You can make a glass card that gives you double multiplier. You can get a card that's wild, so it can be used as any suit. You can get a card that, if discarded, it gives you a tarot card. And then there's so many different objectives and so many different achievements. Trying to win a round with no jokers. Trying to win a round with no discards. Winning with different types of decks. The replayability is just insane. And it is the definition of a pick up and play game because you can play a few hands, you can put your Steam Deck to sleep if you're using the Steam Deck, and you can have a good time. Now, Wii Sports was a great example back in the day of a game that really took the world by storm for casual gamers. People bought Wiis so they could bowl, so they could play baseball, so they could do different things. Balatro has had that same effect in turning a lot of people into gamers who are much more casual. I was on a plane 2-3 weeks ago, and the people next to me were playing Balatro on their phones while I played Animal Well on my Steam Deck. So it's a game that has taken the world by storm. At $15, I don't think that there's a better value in individual gaming if this is your thing. My game of the year, 10 out of 10, highly recommend.
Nice.
Yeah, I was in the full agreement on the best bang for your buck because the replayability on it is endless. Like, it feels like the possibilities are crazy. I can understand exactly why it's number 1 for you. And this is kind of the big thing that it's been like 1-2, because the first ever one was like this with Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us Part 2.
What did I have as my number 1 that year? I'm pretty sure I had Last of Us.
No, you had Half-Life Alyx.
Oh, 2020? Yeah, that's right.
We were both kind of like right there in that 1-2 hold of Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima if you didn't have Half-Life Alyx there.
Yep.
But still, this is the 4th year out of 5 where we did not match.
Right. Well, we're never gonna match.
We actually have for 1 year, and that was God of War Ragnarok in 2022.
For the number 1. Got it.
But that just speaks to just how many fantastic games there are out there.
Agreed.
This is true. I do agree that there is a lot of fantastic stuff, and there's already a pretty good sized list of games coming out for 2025. even on the realm of free to play, that are going to carry some interest. And I've already got kind of the first couple of games that are laid out for the first runs of 2025 on for the Game Pass side of it already.
I gotta know real quick, who like in the chat and also Spennis, I already know the answer from Mac. Who's trying to get into Monster Hunter this year? I love me some Monster Hunter, but it's just not a good game to play with randoms or to play solo. I liked Monster Hunter Rise. I loved Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter Tri, one of the most influential games in my gaming life. Anyone trying to run some Monster Hunter when it comes out in February?
Let him know we need to help Mr. Nice Guy.
I may have Avowed on the list already at that point because the first 3 that I have on the Game Pass list on pre-install, Sniper Elite, Avowed, and Atomfall, as kind of the first 3 there that are on Game Pass, that are on PC Game Pass to look at. And then,
sounds like 2025 is going to be a pretty good year for gaming.
Oh, 2025, because 2024 was a little lighter. I wouldn't be surprised if 2025 is stacked. I still got to eventually wait for the proper release point for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, just so I can get that in there and have it officially count.
I hope that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle lives up to the shoes of Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, one of the best point-and-click adventure games and one of the best Indiana Jones games of all time.
Bethesda's done from what I've seen already, from what people have put up about it, the issue with Bethesda...
Wait, we can't get started on the issues with Bethesda.
We'll be here all night. I love Bethesda, though.
They do make good gems like Deathloop and Fallout, but trying to do Bethesda games on PC, they can be very, very demanding.
This is a whole other episode.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, that is our Game of the Year discussion for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. But before we go, we do share what we've been watching and what we've been playing. I've got a super short list to share. I've been watching Taskmaster. It's been my comfort show. British comedians doing all sorts of tasks with sort of half panel show, half, America's Funniest Home Videos. If you know, you know. And playing Skyrim, trying to fill out that spot in my nerd credibility that has been vacant for so long. Spennis, what have you been watching and playing?
Most recently was Dungeons of Hinterberg.
Nice.
But then I've also been doing Kenna Bridge of Spirits and Super Mario Party Jamboree with my wife. As far as watching Forged in Fire, which in a real concept of it is like chopped for bladesmiths.
I've seen a few Forged in Fire. That's good. That's fun stuff.
Been doing Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, which is kind of off of the Big Bang Theory Young Sheldon spinoff.
Nice.
I did also watch Sonic the Hedgehog 3. They've been getting like the actual concept of it right. Next month I'll have the last 5 episodes of Cobra Kai.
Strike fast, strike first, no mercy.
I think it's strike first, strike hard.
Strike first, strike hard, no mercy.
Hard,
Yeah.
no mercy.
They're making a movie.
Yeah, the Karate Kids Legends, which will now have the figure out the Jackie Chan side of it being canon, along with Ralph Macchio.
You're the best.
I am in.
Around.
Well, Mr. Nice Guy, what about you? What have you been watching and playing? And then we can say goodnight.
Not nearly as much as Spennis. I'm going to talk about one game that I've been playing. Our good friend of the show, previously known, well, he changed his name, his moniker. It's now the Kingler, but he gifted me. We did a gift exchange after hanging out a couple weeks ago, and he gifted me a game from 2010 called VVV. Literally,
yeah!
The letter V 6 times. Mac, you've played it? You're familiar?
I have. I enjoyed that game. Yeah.
Yeah, he gifted me a few little games like this, and I'm having a blast with this game. It's really, really good. It's a platformer with like gravity mechanics. So you jump, you go to the ceiling. You're trying to complete different obstacles and different puzzles, and it's a Metroidvania kind of too, in the sense that you're exploring a map. And I'm really having a lot of fun with it. So I'll list that as the one game that I've been playing over the past few days. And in terms of watching, still doing our Marvel watch through. And there's a show called Relative Race that my wife liked to watch on Sunday evenings, where it's people finding their long-lost relatives that they never met. And kind of a cool little show to relax and multitask to.
Nice.
So that's it. Mac, would you like to take us home, sir?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Spennis, nice guy, as well as you who are listening to this after the fact. Couldn't do the show without you. Thanks. Feel free to join us Tuesdays at the usual time, which is approximately 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central on Tuesdays here at twitch.tv/2nerdsindapod. That's with the number 2 to catch it live, to let us know that we've got it wrong, and to stump us with your nerdy trivia on normal nights. But until we see you next, remember, be excellent to each other and keep it nerdy. Bye.
Deuces and play Balatro!